The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the speaker's own and does not represent legal or accounting advice or counsel and should not be seen as such. The material and information presented here is for general information purposes only, a conversation. We make no promises or assertions on how this information will impact your business, your personal life, or financial well-being. The information relayed does not imply endorsement or offer opposition to any specific organization, product, or services. Welcome to Shift. I'm your host, Lori Power, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
My name is David Solomon, and I'm the proud founder of SERO Growth. And SERO Growth is a strategic growth planning company. But people ask me, why did I call the company SERO? It sounds like zero. Well, SERO is a play on the word on CRO, or Chief Revenue Officer, a strategic individual in an organization that really looks at the planning and the growth within the organization, starting from sales, but aligning with everybody else. So why didn't I just call it CRO Growth? Well, that was taken in a way, and I do a little bit more than that. But the S and the E, which replaces the C, is two parts, and it's strategy and it's execution. So where I came from, I'm a sales guy my whole life, and I've been doing it since I'm a kid, and I loved sales. But what I didn't realize that I started running sales teams is the need to strategize, to understand the customers, to come back with the right strategies. And I didn't know I was doing that. And so for my first 2/3 of my career, I was doing it naturally. When I went back to do my MBA, I discovered what I was really doing and fell in love with it. So now I teach it at McGill, and I now have run my own practice where I help companies reach their revenue and growth streams.
You know what? I like that there's a story behind the name because there's always a story behind the name,
All
especially
this
when
story.
you're the founder. You already, David, you bring up one thing that is really near and dear to my heart, and that is execution. I went through the SEPA program, the Certified Exit Planning. They said, you have to execute relentlessly. Just finished at least 2 different books where the theme was execute, execute, and execute,
Years,
and
right.
where teams fail. Tell me and take me through a little bit about the strategy is one thing, but I love that it's right in the name of to execute.
Yeah.
Where do they intersect and how do you help businesses?
I actually find it funny because I find it kind of like it always does this. So like a wave one into the other, because you can't execute without having a strategy, and you can't strategizing without knowing the execution. And they always play into each other. And I just spoke to somebody not that long ago, and I said, I worked in a toy company back in the 90s. Our strategy, our mission, our idea was going to be offering the greatest toy value in the market, bar none. And we decided how we did that. The execution was we were going to manufacture, imagine toy company in Canada, manufacturing in Canada. So we could keep the prices low, accommodate our customers, especially the Walmarts of the day, just in time, make sure that they get the product on time. But as important was to keep the pricing down and affordable and the value all the way through the chain. And we kept doing that. We kept making sure every time a new product would come out, does it follow the execution? Does it follow what we want to achieve at the end of the day? And all that was great. And we realized its importance when we were bought out in the late 90s. We were bought out by an American private equity fund. Our ownership, after 2 years, left. New business management runs the company, and now they're changing. They want to keep the same strategy, but the execution of it was, okay, now we're going to import containers from China, and now we're going to change this and change that and change that. And it completely destroyed the execution to the point where we were bankrupt in 20 months. So the importance of that strategy and the execution need to go hand in hand. And you need to constantly reevaluate your execution and reevaluate your strategy to make sure that so at the end of the day, when it comes to succession planning, when it comes up to handing it over, you've got a history, a flow, and an understanding. But look what we've done. Here are our past mistakes. Here's how we could have adjusted it. but you're constantly strategizing and you're constantly evaluating the execution.
In teams. This
Oh,
is what you're telling me is that a breakdown in the communication of teams in keeping to that strategy, keeping to that mission of the company, and really what that company purchased versus what they did with it.
the team was important. What ended up happening is we were a well-honed machine for not to be punny, but everybody was passionate. The owners, the original ownership, the senior management, passionate. I mean, I'll tell you how passionate it was. Our head of operations accidentally put his hand in an injection molding machine. It crushed his hand, but he was going to go in with his hand. He was going to fix it. That's how passionate he was about working there. When the new managers showed up and it was their turn, they sat behind their desks. They were concerned about their own KPIs or their key performance indicators. They were concerned about their bonuses and their perks. And there was no concern whatsoever about the other department. And that was my first exposure to lack of alignment in a team. It was everyone for themselves. And I could go on stories just about that one company, but that was enlightening to see that, yeah, okay, we're going to put a strategy together. We know how to execute, but I don't care about the other person. That stinks.
We still face that today though, don't we, David, where we have a leadership team and sometimes, and this is going to segue into talking about succession planning. So often business owners or business leaders, but especially the ownership, thinks in order to have a saleable business, they need to step away and allow the business to run without them. And while I think that that has significant merit, so I'm going to take myself and I'm going to say 75% of me agrees with that. When it comes down to that strategy and execution, though, that 25% of me
Yeah.
doesn't understand it. I cannot see how a business owner who's the leader of the organization, especially in Canada, where 90% of our businesses are less than 100 people,
Yeah.
how an owner can then just completely step away. I think in order to keep that strategic focus and be able to execute, you need to have at least one foot in the door that understands what's going on in that business that's making you money and going to continue to be the best and largest investment of your career.
I think my experience is when you have the right leader, whether they're physically or emotionally present, that makes the difference. And I think think of our best business leaders out there. Steve Jobs, as much as he was called a micromanager and a maniac and all kinds of other terms, the man was inspirational. He got people. It created something incredible. I don't believe that a business owner can completely disconnect from the business. I agree that business owners need to be able to pass on their message, their vision, the company why. And I start with the company why as to why did the founder start the company? Why are we doing what we're doing? And I mean, that's a Simon Sinek. If
Yeah.
you read the book, please read the book. I highly encourage it. But that notion is that everybody gets the feeling of why. If that's the case, then when everybody has that feeling of why, I don't have to be physically present, but I'm there emotionally, remembering the business, making sure the business runs fine, and what have you. So I just never want to see an owner disconnect because then there are other questions. People are going to start asking, where are they? Why are they gone? How come they're not here? And I think that will disrupt the flow and the direction you want to take the company in.
I couldn't agree more, and you said it so much better than I did. I do agree. The business needs to be able to be operational day to day without being micromanaged or having that person there to say you need to, you need to, you need to. But you're absolutely, I love the way that you had outlined it, is there still needs to be a leadership. There needs to be a tether, if you would, to the balloon that's floating.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, and companies don't realize that, and business owners. Okay, when they get to a certain age, I understand, but you're the leader. I liken it to sports. Okay, there's all the coach is always there. The owner's always there. People are always there because that's part of the culture of excellence. And everybody sees that and feels that and breathes that every single day. The teams that have that dysfunctionality are the ones that don't have that understanding that it comes from the top, and everybody breathes it every single day. And that's business, and that's where you find the most successful businesses.
When you're working with companies, David, and you're talking about strategy and how they flow together, how many companies build in where they're going to go next, that succession planning as part of the strategy, which is originally why you and I
Yeah, no,
started
100%.
the conversation.
Right, and Lori, I'm gonna tell you, when the answer is very few think about doing it. When I first sit down with a business owner and my first conversation with them is, where do you want to be when you grow up? When this company reaches its pinnacle, what do you want it to be? Where do you want it to go? Do you want to 10x the company? Great. Do you want to transfer to your children? Great. Do you want to sell it? Great. Each one needs its own strategy. And so when we're talking about succession planning, and I met with a business owner who says, yes, I'd like my kids to come into the company. Well, how old are your kids? They're 15. Awesome. So that means we have what, 8, 10, 15 years before they come here? Oh, that's a long time. It's not a long time. It's tomorrow morning. And if you put the things into place today, they walk in, it's smooth. If you don't, it's a bumpy road. And so let's establish the infrastructure for them to come in here. And when they come in here, I can't control, they're 15. But if the goal is after high school, university, or whatever it is, awesome. Where, how, what do we want them to do? What are their strengths? Let's start to hone on that, but also set up the company so that they transition in. And your managers should also know that your intentions are to bring your children in, because if their intentions are to sit in your chair, but you're going to bring the kids in, when do you want them to know? 10 minutes before they walk in? Not the best of strategies.
And that is a culture shock, a culture
Huge.
shock. And I know you have experience with this, David, in the family enterprise
Yeah.
scenario, that if there isn't that pre-planning that goes into, well, do we even know if my kids are going to be interested? What's the contingency plan?
Oh, yeah.
You know, they end up in their mid-20s, they finish university and they go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur on my own. You would do what you do. I'm going to do what I do, because there's family dynamics that go on in there as well. How many businesses, if they say, and I can just imagine they say to you, David, you know what, my kids are going to come into the business, they're 15 now, we got plenty of time, I didn't even want to think about it, and all of a sudden they've pulled out the next 10 years based on their kids coming in to this business, only to find out at the ninth hour they're not. Then what?
Well, look, again, but that's about strategy, and strategy is not about a one direction, and it's not about one strategy. You have to be able to adapt and pivot, whether your kids come into the business or not. I mean, let's go back to 2019, everybody. No one knew about a global pandemic. Nobody knew what was about to happen March of 2020. And those that were able to pivot were the most successful ones. Planning for your children to come into the business isn't etched in stone. It's exactly that. It's a plan. And it's like I said, this is a pencil strategy, not a pen strategy. So you're going to go ahead and write this all out. We're going to plan it out, but we're also going to have a parallel plan that maybe one kid doesn't come in, maybe all the kids don't come in. I don't know. I have 3 wonderful boys. I love them all. And I got to tell you, of my 3, 2 would work with me today. My third one has no interest. He's an artist. And so for me, if I were to have that kind of business to create that succession plan, then now today I know it would be 2 out of 3. If you would have asked me 10 years ago, I would have said 0. So you plan to change, you plan to adapt. You don't plan and oh my God, it's gonna happen. I mean, that's what's planning. That's what You know, the old joke, right? Man plans, God laughs, because things are inevitably going to change.
What's the most common feedback you get when you start working with owners and you bring this topic up?
I don't need to strategize. I'm fine. I don't need a strategy. We've been good till now. And I say, okay, great. Okay. Have you felt the winds of change? I mean, the one thing that has now helped a lot of us is artificial intelligence. And that wakes up people up a lot, because this is the first shock in the system that I can remember. Probably, I mean, I don't remember. I know the internet came in and email and cellular phones, but they kind of gradually came in. It wasn't a shock. AI is a shock. And I think business owners are starting to go, I don't know what to do. And I said, now is this time to talk about strategy. And they're now starting to wake up to this idea that, yeah, I have to put things into place. But oh my God, Lori, when I used to say strategy, they thought it was a 4-letter word. It was like a disgusting, dirty word that I would use.
What about those companies that you go in, David, that have good strategy in place? You start working with them and they can't figure out why nothing's getting done. And now we're going to focus on that E. We're going to focus on that relentless execution.
You know what? Because strategy is a thought. We've done our homework, we've done our research. Now we got to go do it. You said it before. Do I have the right people in place? And it starts with people. Oh my Lord, if you don't evaluate your people while doing the strategy, there's no strategy. And what I'm talking about, there's certain parts that you got to look for in an individual. Are they interested in your business, and have they adopted your why? Two, do they have the culture of growth inside of them? And a lot of people say, yeah, 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 they're really, really good. But do they know how to help you grow your business? Are they executors or they're strategists? And again, this even there you have to decide, do I have the right people in the right roles? I met one individual, this gentleman has 15 direct reports. 15 direct reports. He's the business owner. And I said, that is insanity. He goes, but I don't have anybody around the table that's strategic enough for me. I said, well, maybe it's time to find you somebody who's strategic to help you, but has an understanding of the operation. So the first thing is people. The second thing is process. Do you have the right operational processes in place? Now, Quebec, surprise, has a beautiful law that came in. It wasn't meant to be a beautiful law, but it's about making sure that we privatize people's data. It's anybody who wants to do business in Quebec. This is for all Canadian companies and beyond. But if you're in Quebec or doing business in Quebec, you must be able to know how to privatize the data, and you must inform your clients, your employees, and your suppliers what you're doing with that said data. That means you have to map every one of your operational processes. If you don't have the right processes in place, to your point, what you said earlier, communication breakdown, inefficiencies, okay, and then you cause other problems, okay, and everybody says, oh, I'll slap in another piece of software. It's not it. It's not about slapping software. It's about harmony. And so it's not just human harmony, but process harmony. And once you've got those two in place, the other parts of the execution should just fall well into place, because everybody knows what they got to do and everybody will just execute properly. But get people and processes there. Oh, wow. That's a game changer. I wish everybody would just start there.
I think too, something that held me back as a business owner until I understood, we always talk about investing in our business. We talk about you have to invest in it in order to grow your business. But I think what's very often, at least it was not part of the conversations that I had been a part of 10 years ago, was the value of understanding this J curve, right? We go out and we love the sexy appeal of the hockey stick, right? I'm going to, that's it. I'm going to check mark that and off we go. But what we don't realize is when we are investing in our strategy and our processes and our people, of how we're going to hopefully have a shallow J curve, but that's that investment into our company before we can get to that line of advancement. When you're working with companies, how shocked are they typically that you have to invest in order to get to
Oh,
that upward flow.
I mean, I just gave you a lot of money to be my consultant. You're telling me I'm gonna lose money over the next little bit? No, I'm not telling you you're gonna lose money, but you're 100% right. We need to put money into making things better. And if I go back to what I just said before, people cost money, but good people cost money, but bad people cost even more money. So I need to spend the time and evaluate my team. That's gonna be an investment. Now, to use an accounting term, you need to audit your people. You need to audit to make sure that they're right, the right fits or whatever. That takes time and an investment. So there's a little bit of that little bump. Operational processes are the same thing. And I work with people who they do operational process audits, and that costs money and it's an investment. But you said the J is, is 1,000%. It's like, it's just a little, you're right. Let's just like try to keep a nice shallow curve. Nothing too deep and steep. We don't want a hockey stick going too far down. But your sales should not be impacted and you should not continue to deliver what you currently have. But this was an, non-planned tweak or change that you're going to put in the company. And so if you're willing to budget that into the following year and you can plan out that next part of it, awesome. But if you want to do it right away, yeah, it's going to be a bump. And people like myself and yourself, Lori, we try to keep the bumps as minimal as possible. But investments mean putting money into something with a real ROI. If not, why are you investing?
And it's communication, communication, communication. Knowing ahead of time that these are our experiences as the experts in the room, and we're going to be here. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to walk you through it. We're going to get you independent to where you need to go. So, my question is, in your opinion, when we're working with strategies and we're focused on execution, why is it then that so many succession plans fall apart, in your opinion?
Um, I think, and I think that it's just a lot of it has to do with, you know, motivation. A lot of people are not, they're tired. You get to a certain age, I get it, you're tired, you're fed up of doing it. But it's also a question of it, and I'm gonna repeat myself, it's adaptability. It's the market, the one thing that's consistent is the market will change. None of
Yeah.
us sat here 1 year ago knowing there was gonna be a war in the Middle East that was gonna disrupt supply chain. No one knew that the Panama Canal was gonna be lower in water, which would also disrupt supply chain. What do you do then? You have to be ready to adapt. And if tomorrow it's another bump, we're the one consistency is that something is going to someone's going to try to put a stick in our wheel in the spokes of our wheel, and we have to learn how to avoid it, adapt to it, change, open-mindedness, look for new solutions. And I got to tell you, if again, AI is a wake-up call for people to start realizing I really need to take this seriously and come up with contingency plans. And to succession planning, it's like, okay, if one way doesn't work, I have a friend of mine who was just approached by the way to have his business bought. He never thought of that, and now he went, if only I'd well, I'd
Because it's not enough to be approached if you're not prepared to give over that data and then further that conversation with the person who has or the organization that has approached you, well, then they'll just walk away. They will find another opportunity.
now,
The market will only pay what the market will pay. I did a non-scientific survey of business owners, those willing to answer the questions. The majority of business owners that responded, half of them said, yes, I've considered it. When I asked for comment on how they knew they would be purchased, they said that the one answer that was familiar with across the board was somebody will buy it when the time is right.
um, I think that and you think you've seen it more than I have. We live in a world of wishful thinking. We hear about the multi-billion-dollar acquisitions in the technology sector, and we hear of people within our industry, whatever. Oh, so I must be next. Maybe, but are you ready? Are you ready? for that acquisition? Have you strategized? As part of your strategy is, have I optimized my value to be attractive to an owner? One of the things is that my father-in-law sold his business, and and the toy industry collapsed a few years later. Okay, had he stuck it out like he was planning to, who knows where he would have gone. But the essence of it is be prepared. It's a Boy Scout thing, but be prepared for who knows what, but be prepared to push. At the end of the day, don't you want optimal value? Even if you hand it over to your children or you sell it, don't you want optimal value for them? That to me would be my number one goal.
That is such a simple, excellent way of phrasing it is, don't we want optimal value? Of course we do. As we come to the end of this, and I'm going to, of course, ask you back because there's so
Sure.
much we haven't touched on. What prevents, I'm going to think maybe sometimes it's a bit of ego that we've been at the helm so long, we think we can do everything else and we won't bring in outside help like yourself to help us with the strategy. As you said, oh, I'm fine, I've got good strategy. What holds people back from getting the expert to help them through this planning process?
Well, you hit the first one was ego, and the second one is money. And I think that the ego is, a lot of entrepreneurs said, I've done it without you. What do I need you? And some of the best business owners and CEOs recognize at a certain point that the business can't grow beyond what you can bring them. Um, Bill Gates stepped aside because he realized he couldn't take the company any further. Jeff Bezos realized he's not going to take Amazon any further. I mean, they took their companies very, very long way, and many of us should be so lucky to do that. But there's just two examples of people who recognized I can't do this anymore. I won't be of any value to the company. So if we could put our ego in check, which is very, very hard, but the second thing is the ROI. There are a lot of pretenders out there, Lori, and you and I have met them along the way of our careers. People, those lovely, medicine men on a box selling you the next cure to your businesses. And by the way, SERO, by the way, is funny because it's Latin for serum. And people say, again, you're also a medicine man. No, I'm not going to promise you that I'm going to cure everything. But if you're really, you got to understand that not everybody's a trickster and not everybody's here to steal your money, but there's so much to be had. There's so much opportunity. Find the right fit, find the right partner or consultant, if you will, and that ROI is going to come much, much faster. But like you said, when you talked about the J, you've got to be willing to invest in your business, and bringing in outside help from other industries, other sectors. I mean, you have a whole bunch of industry expertise and from different sectors. I bring it. Somebody said to me, "Goes, do you have expertise in food?" I said, "Yeah, I eat it, but I don't. I never sold food. I've never, but." So what? But I can bring you an idea for the toy business or the technology business that can make you successful. So putting the ego aside and putting the money into it, that's the key.
In my opinion, I think if you are going to work with an outside expert, if you're not having the conversation at the very onset to say, in my experience as an expert, this is where we're expecting things to go. We're going to try to keep it as shallow as possible before we get you to where you are planning to land, then that might be the difference between purchasing the
Yeah.
witch doctor to
Yeah.
purchasing expertise.
The one
Same.
thing, look, if I could just add, sorry, if I could just add one thing, is the one thing that a business owner should be is vulnerable. Be vulnerable. We're not attacking your ego. We're not attacking your success, but be vulnerable that you don't know and that you're here to learn. And I learned that when I went back to school after 20 years in business. I went back to school, and I went, oh my God, here are all these things I didn't know. That's what that people like you and myself can bring to the table.
Those are awesome last words. And thank you for the conversation. Until next time.
Thanks, Laura.